to the Ahn Rho Project. This is a psychiatric self-therapy multimedia project to solve the problems, challenges, and obstacles in our lives, as well as a self-improvement process to reach the heights, goals, and ambitions that we have set for ourselves, as well as those around us. If you look at a brief introduction and brief summary as to how we break down the Ahn Rho Project into domains of life, sub-series, analogies, and so on and so forth, you can check that out on the previous live streams for the past 3.5 years through to January 2021 and beyond. So with that being said, of course, and that includes the copyright-free music, content library schedule, and how we divide the stream into 11 segments across a 3-part phase, and it won't take too much of your time. Alright, that's the introduction. Segment 2, as usual, solve A5 override, a rule to break all the rules, a system principle to free myself from the system, and just be purely practical and get what's done. The second thing, of course, you want to skip the introduction. There's even short 1-minute introduction, just fast forward on YouTube or Twitch in future live streams by about maybe a minute and a half. That's it. So let's take a look on screen. What you see is what you get on the left hand panel. That's a lot of phase 2 items. On the right hand side you have a little bit. What you see here is some stuff. I spent the majority of the day yesterday trying to prepare a batch of resources. I probably went overboard, but nevertheless I was preparing a bunch of resources from a cousin who was experiencing similar issues in her household dynamic between her guardians, and I won't go into any detail on that because of obvious privacy and confidentiality, but basically she's experiencing similar issues that I may have had in my sort of household, and in the sort of, well, it's not even my household necessarily, but it's a common theme between many narcissistic family dynamics. So that's something that I felt was relevant to her as we can't our conversations. It was very relatable, and I was just trying to compile these bunch of things. So you see some things here having to do with humor, with having to do with psychiatry. We have a lot of documentation like that. We also have some food that's unrelated to that, obviously, some Taiwanese sausage and watermelons and stuff like that, so that's a little bit different. So we'll touch upon all these aspects in some detail. Then we see here, of course, again, more of the food. I'll take an order, the sausage, the watermelon, but we also have at the very top more of the projects and getting down, trying to organize and compile them onto a cloud drive to share. And then of course at the very bottom we have a continuation, just like you see in the title, continuation of yesterday's unfinished business, covering things about the tier and hierarchy of management and focus of attention or resources for the Ahn Rho Project, which is really just a representation of the complexity and also the simplicity of life. So we're gonna touch about that. It's very important, and let's just dive right into it. Let's start off with the media assets that I want to get through as quickly as possible and as easily as I can. So there's one of those softwares that allowed you to download basically like videos from YouTube, for example, music from YouTube. It's called Video Proc, and I have to count again. Showing gratitude, appreciation. Just want to say a big thank you to Serge, as usual. That's where I found this from. So you can see here a bunch of stuff, a bunch of screenshots, me just saying, hey, these are the resources, here's some stuff I downloaded. There's something to do with humor and comedy here from Andrew Schultz. But you know, the majority of the resources were not in comedy. This is from his video on the dumbest audience, and it's hilarious, of course. There's also some stuff here having to do with some dance interpretation. Now these are the very light-hearted resources that I passed over, and the majority of them were far more serious. So I was actually using these media resources here in humor and dance and music to counteract the majority of resources, which are very serious and can be a little bit depressing even to some extent. And that's what I'm going to show you right here, the memo on the usage of the resources that I actually am sort of almost not copy-pasting completely, but in a sense, the majority of the structure is the same at the very least, and the resources are for the most part the same. The things that I share with my family or my so-called non-blood related family, to the colleagues at my workplace who really are like family to me that I've never had my entire life, I've shared a majority of them through a link, or I intend to over the day after this live stream ends, to my cousin who is experiencing very similar issues. And so these are some of the resources here. You can see it's a variety of stuff, audio recordings, audio books, video essays. We have seminars, lectures, so on and so forth. So why we age, the art of war, so on and so forth. And these are a lot of coping mechanisms, how to change your behavior, how to cope with stresses and challenges. But most importantly, at the very bottom, we also have stuff having to do with psychiatry and personality disorders, and so that's kind of stuff very relevant. Once again, without getting into any personal details, right? No, just a privacy thing here. That's kind of relevant stuff having to do with the conversation. So that's that. Okay, moving on. Okay. Again, I apologize if I can't. I'm not gonna put any names, right? No names, no addresses, no nothing like that. That's just how it is. Like, this one is something that I can only touch upon very briefly, very vaguely, for sake of confidentiality. Okay, so moving on, and that's never been a problem with the project, right? I always have to maintain privacy at some level. So we have some watermelons here, some photographs of watermelons and sausages, Taiwanese sausages, and once again, watermelon. This is stuff that has to do with class 2 items. These are purchased from my domestic guardians, so my caregivers, as I like it and CPTSD is meaning that I focus too much on the details. So every step is like putting me, all right, I got to push this level of detail beyond me and focus on something that's of higher priority. So reallocate my resources. That's what the solve override is all about. So I stop focusing on things that don't matter and start to focus on the next level of things that do matter. And so with every successive, say solve 6/5, then we go to solve 7, it's like I just remove certain aspects. Like I stop giving to the introduction to a live stream, or I stop behaving in certain ways, physically, biologically speaking, through my habits, and each override is a next step. So I'm gonna cover that over here. It seems like we're short on time still. We have only about 2 minutes left, but you can see here, this has more to do with the residence. I think I already talked about this. Throughout the entire residence, I've been trying to get down to principles. For example, making sure I pace around when I think about where I'm designing things, because walking works the blood throughout your brain, and then you can think better as opposed to when you're sitting. Write things down, record your thoughts, and then make sure you organize the principles by you're organizing the locations according to the kind of materials you have, whether it's equipment or hardware, electronics, or food. So that was what's all about. At the very bottom here, we have some stuff having to do with priorities, right? And trying to map out the process of thinking that I had, the mistakes that I made along the way, focusing too much on certain details, and then taking a pause, pulling myself back and saying, okay, what did I do wrong? And then I had to focus on the priorities again. So this had a lot to do with the residency, which is usually phase 3. System hierarchy has to do with this one right here, and it was actually sort of like a revolution, sort of like a realization I had from watching one of my subs, and he's a great guy, runs a tech channel, and that's how I came to this kind of understanding of the way the solve override, the system override that in the live stream is related to the Ahn Rho Project. How the system override is like an evolution